begin from development finance institutions and multilateral organizations, our private sector partners, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome the President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, to the Sustainable Infrastructure Development Symposium, South Africa 2026. Mr. President, this year's symposium is focused on shaping the future of municipal infrastructure. It is at a municipal level that South Africans experience infrastructure most directly. As we heard this morning, whether it's through the water that they receive, the roads that they travel on, or the electricity that supports their small businesses, as well as the sanitation systems that we require to protect public health. Our discussions this morning, and indeed over the last 2 days, have reinforced a central message that South Africa does not lack infrastructure ambition or ideas, or even money, to be perfectly honest. Our challenge is to prepare those projects, mobilize finance, and move with greater urgency from planning to procurement to construction and to delivery. Sidssa brings together government, municipalities, partners from across the continent, investors, financiers, and technical partners to help achieve precisely that. As you know, Mr. President, South Africa has committed more than 1 trillion rand to public infrastructure over the next 3 years, and is a rolling amount. Our collective responsibility is to ensure that the commitment produces active construction sites, functional infrastructure, economic growth, and better services for our communities. Mr. President, as the chairperson of the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Council, you lead the national structure responsible for coordinating the National Infrastructure Plan, prioritizing strategic integrated projects, and help move obstacles to facilitate infrastructure investment. Through the PICC, national, provincial, and local government are being brought together around a common program, and that is to strengthen Infrastructure South Africa, improve municipal bulk infrastructure, unlock new sources of finance, and accelerate regulatory approvals. Mr. President, your leadership has placed infrastructure at the center of South Africa's development and economic agenda. We look forward to your reflections on the progress made, the work still required, and the next phase of our national infrastructure program. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor this year to invite the President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, to deliver the keynote address to Sidssa 2026. And as they would say in the movies, it's over to you, Mr. President.
Well. A Program Director, Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Minister Dean McPherson, Ministers and Deputy Ministers present from South Africa and indeed our beloved continent, premiers of our country in various provinces, mayors and head of Infrastructure South Africa, members of the Diplomatic Corps, leaders of business and labor, representatives of development finance institutions and multilateral organizations, and infrastructure professionals, as well as practitioners, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen. I am sorry that I am not able to be present physically amongst you, something that I regret deeply because I've always felt the real privilege of being amongst you as you hold this symposium. So forgive me for not being there. but we obviously have to say thank you to the wonders of technology that we are able to, on a live basis, interact with each other and even see each other. So I do know that you are seeing my pretty face, exactly where you are. I may not be able to see all of your pretty faces, but those I see, like the one I saw recently of the minister, pretty bright face indeed. So technology enables us then to interact. We meet just a week after the leaders of the Southern African Development Community held their 46th Ordinary SADC Summit in eThekwini. At the center of discussion at that summit was the work we must collectively undertake as the 16 countries in our region to further integrate the economies of our region. Infrastructure is fundamental to the integration of our Southern African region and the African continent indeed. We need roads, bridges, rail lines, ports, power lines, data cables, and gas pipelines and fuel pipelines that cross our region and our continent. We're beginning to envisage building pipelines, including water pipelines that could run for 7, 8, 10,000 kilometers. So our ambitions are at a high level. In doing all this, we know that we must link mines to factories and farms to markets. We must link gas fields to industrial plants and wind farms to homes and businesses. We must also link mobile phones to data centers. We must link businesses to customers. It is for this reason that South Africa has placed infrastructure investment at the center of our drive for inclusive growth and job creation. In fact, as we are involved in a reform process, a massive structural reform process, we're also reforming the way infrastructure is delivered, how it is financed, how it is conceptualized, and how it is made bankable. So infrastructure, therefore, is very much part of our reform agenda. We know that our ability to grow the economy for our country depends on whether we can secure reliable energy, sufficient water, efficient ports and railways, functioning roads, digital connectivity, and cities and towns that work. Infrastructure, therefore, and ultimately affects the daily lives of South Africans. It determines whether a household has clean water, whether a community has functioning sanitation, whether a learner has a safe and sustainable school to go to, whether a commuter can travel safely and affordably, and whether a business can rely on the basic services it needs to operate. So when we embark on the infrastructure investment drive, we are essentially clear that South Africa needs to change fundamentally, particularly the way in which infrastructure is planned, it's prepared, it's financed, and it's delivered. We did recognize that our infrastructure system was too fragmented, and that's what gave rise to the reform process around the delivery of infrastructure. The result was a delay, escalating costs, and in too many instances, projects that did not proceed at all. We have strengthened coordination through the Infrastructure Development Act and the work of Infrastructure South Africa, in preparing and advancing the country's strategic infrastructure pipeline. We expect Infrastructure South Africa to ensure that our infrastructure pipeline is progressing, that projects are properly planned, and that the funding is secured, and that procurement takes place when it is supposed to. Now, the economic imperative for doing this is so clear. South Africa's level of investment remains far below what is required to achieve faster and more sustainable economic growth. The gross fixed capital formation of our country, which measures investment in productive assets such as infrastructure, machinery, equipment, and productive capacity, stood at around 12% of GDP in 2025. This is less than half of the 30% investment level envisaged in the National Development Plan for 2030. Now, these figures should concern us. In fact, they should alarm us, and they should motivate us at the same time to work with greater urgency and diligence to build the infrastructure our country needs. Now, as we meet at this 6th Sustainable Infrastructure Development Symposium, we can say with confidence that we are moving ahead at a greater pace. The estimated capital value of the portfolio of our strategic integrated projects has grown from approximately 340 billion rand in 2020 to more than 1.67 trillion rand. That is a phenomenal growth. There are 195 public and private-led infrastructure projects across priority sectors in the current portfolio. Over the last several years, 32 projects with an estimated value of approximately 48 billion have been completed. At present, 55 projects with an estimated value of more than 407 billion rand are in construction. Now, what does this tell us? It tells us that the pipeline is becoming more mature, but it also tells us where our attention must now be concentrated. We must focus on conversion. We need to convert plans into prepared projects, convert prepared projects into investments, and convert investments into construction. Most importantly, we need to convert construction into infrastructure that supports economic activity and improves the lives of our people. The role of Infrastructure SA is vital to do this. Drawing its mandate from the Infrastructure Development Act, Infrastructure SA plays a critical role in coordinating and facilitating strategic integrated projects across government. It identifies blockages and brings the relevant institution together to resolve them. One of the most important lessons we have learned is that South Africa does not suffer from a shortage of infrastructure proposals. Our constraint is that too many of these projects are not adequately prepared. There is an important difference between a project that is needed and a project that is ready. Through Infrastructure SA, 600 million rand project preparation facility, 26 projects have received and are receiving project development support. This kind of support is particularly important as we shift our focus towards municipal infrastructure delivery. Municipal infrastructure is not only where the effectiveness of the state is most directly felt and tested. It is the foundation of inclusive economic growth. Businesses cannot function without reliable municipal infrastructure. Children cannot be schooled. Workers cannot get to work, and communities cannot be developed. That is why we have to address municipal infrastructure differently. Providing another grant without addressing the underlying capability of the institution is just not sufficient. Building a new asset without making provision for the way it will operate and also its maintenance going forward is not sustainable. So we should not just be dumping projects on our people and walking away. Developing long lists of projects without preparing them properly does not constitute an infrastructure pipeline. The approach we are developing places project preparation, institutional capability, financing, and asset management together. This work is beginning to bear fruit. For example, Infrastructure SA just spent about 1.8 million to prepare and package a project for the Machabeng local municipality to replace over 1,700 kilometers of water pipes. That relatively modest investment in preparation helped to unlock an 800 million rand debt financing facility from the Development Bank of South Africa. Now, through the Adopt a Municipality pilot program, Infrastructure South Africa is preparing and packaging projects to unlock 7 billion of the investment. The program is focusing on municipal trading services such as water and sanitation, electricity and energy, and waste management. One of the important reforms we have pursued in recent years is to provide greater certainty and visibility around the country's infrastructure pipeline. Today we are releasing the third edition of the construction book. This showcases projects worth more than 350 billion rand, spanning sectors such as water and sanitation, transport and logistics, energy and electricity, and municipal infrastructure. Now, the construction book provides the market with a very clear view of funded and investment-ready infrastructure projects that are expected to enter procurement over the next 12 to 18 months. Now, this edition contains over 170 projects with an estimated value of 264 billion rand. Now, to ensure that these projects move from the page on the ground, we will now publish quarterly performance reports on the construction book. Now, as South Africa, we have situated our infrastructure ambitions within the wider context of regional and continental integration. I understand that the third Leaders Forum held yesterday gave particular attention to the infrastructure required to better connect our economies and markets. Now, this aligns very well with the discussions we held last week at the SADC Summit. We know that physical infrastructure alone will not deliver integration. We must continue to work in a harmonious manner in terms of our policies, our regulations, and our standards and institutional arrangements that enable infrastructure systems to operate effectively across national boundaries. That is why we are particularly encouraged by the participation of leaders, of investors, of financiers, and technical experts from across our continent. None of this work can be undertaken by government acting alone. The scale and complexity of infrastructure development demands partnership across the state, with the private sector, and with the development finance institutions and commercial lenders, and indeed with various other social formations. It requires strong cooperation between local, provincial, and local government. It also requires a capable state-owned entity or entities, as well as implementing agencies. But it also needs, unavoidably, engineers, planners, quantity surveyors, construction companies, as well as other infrastructure professionals. But it also requires universities and training institutions that develop the skills our country needs, as well as international and development partners who bring experience, expertise, as well as capital. So this symposium is important because it does bring together those different partners together around a common purpose to improve the way we plan, the way we finance, and ultimately the way we deliver infrastructure. Now, the task before us is substantial, but so too is the opportunity. If we continue to improve the quality of project preparation and strengthen the institutions responsible for delivery, we can significantly increase the pace and the scale of infrastructure investment. I hold the view that if we create greater certainty for investors and build enduring partnerships across government, business, society, which should include labor, we can create opportunities for all our people. So I would suggest that we ensure that we build and serve our nation, our region, and our continent, not only for today, but for tomorrow, but for many, many generations to come. Every generation is at the end measured but by what it has built and by what it has left behind. We are almost regaled by looking at what previous generations have built, our forebears. What they've built and left behind is in many ways what defines us as countries and as nations. So sitting here, all of us, we have a unique responsibility, not only for building for today's purposes, but also for building for tomorrow and into posterity. Not so much that we should be remembered for having done so. It is much more about how we build nations, how we even utilize those resources we have to advance the interests of our people as a whole. This is a beautiful challenge we have, and let us proceed to make sure that we do deliver on that challenge. So thank you very much, particularly for allowing me to address you offline, online, and not offshore, but far away from where you are. So thank you very much. I regret once again for not being there with you, but thank you.
that everyone here was quite mesmerized by your pretty face. So it's worked. Mr. President, we announced earlier that we have the top 8 infrastructure priorities for preparation for the 2026-2027 financial year. This is a pipeline of projects that will receive project prep and support from Infrastructure South Africa. These are projects that are selected from the bid window 2 on project preparation, where Infrastructure South Africa called on the submission of projects that have the potential to unlock significant economic opportunities. So ladies and gentlemen, please let's fix our eyes on our screens to watch a video that spotlights some strategic integrated projects and announces the top 8 priority projects.
Infrastructure is the foundation of communities, economies, and opportunity. Closing South Africa's infrastructure investment gap requires more than funding. It requires projects that are well prepared, coordinated, and ready for investment. This showcase features 5 projects that demonstrate ISA's role in strengthening South Africa's infrastructure pipeline. The University of Limpopo Student Accommodation Project forms part of the Student Housing Infrastructure Program and is a gazetted strategic integrated project supported by Infrastructure South Africa. With a capital value of approximately 1.5 billion rand, the project will deliver 4,500 student beds.
The project started in 2024, and then the first spade on the ground was May 2024. And then the project is split into 3 phases. Each phase consists of 2 villages. So we've completed the first 2 villages, which is phase 1. Phase 2 will be completed end of August, which is the other 2 villages. And then we'll be left with phase 3, which is the last 2 villages. And then that is planned to be finished in December this year.
Through coordinated oversight and implementation support, Infrastructure South Africa is helping accelerate the delivery of critical student infrastructure and strengthen South Africa's social infrastructure pipeline. Reliable water infrastructure strengthens economic growth, industrial development, and sustainable communities. The refurbishment and upgrade of the Olifantspoort and Ebenezer water supply schemes is a gazetted strategic integrated project supported by Infrastructure South Africa.
The project came about as a method to alleviate a water challenge within the Polokwane city and also the Capricorn District Municipality, where there were severe shortages of water supply, mainly due to a high demand than the available supply. The infrastructure dates back to the 1970s and later into the 1980s, where some of the pumps were completely beyond repair, and also there were issues related to water losses. So the water challenges were so severe that in 2013, the municipality made a moratorium on new development, where they could not allow new development to take place within the city until the issues are addressed.
With a capital value of approximately 23.2 billion rand, the project will rehabilitate aging infrastructure, improve water security, and increase bulk water supply across Limpopo.
The schemes Olifants and Ebenezer, and particularly Olifantspoort, it's the only surface water source to the city of Polokwane and Capricorn. These 2 schemes are currently supplying 70% of water to the city of Polokwane.
The upgraded schemes will increase treatment capacity to approximately 270 megalitres per day at Olifantspoort and 56 megalitres per day at Ebenezer, helping meet growing regional demand.
We currently implemented a refurbishment project, but we are still aiming to do an upgrade portion of the project, which is aimed at increasing supply to both municipalities. Our aim is that by the year 2030 or 2031, we will be able to supply the city up to the required demand and also up to the demand for 2046. So our aim is to ensure that the city of Polokwane and the Capricorn district has enough water to last for the next 20 years. In 2022, under the direction of the Director General of the Water and Sanitation, Dr. Sean Phillip, he established a project steering committee where the Department of Water and Sanitation, Lepelle Northern Water, DBSA, Infrastructure South Africa, and the municipalities and other role players deliberate on administrative matters that are aimed at unlocking the project, from project financing, technical issues, legal issues, regulatory matters. So they play a critical role.
Through coordinated oversight and implementation support, Infrastructure South Africa is helping unlock the strategic integrated project, strengthening water security, service delivery, and economic development across the region. Many infrastructure projects do not stall because the need is unclear, but because they are not sufficiently prepared for investment. Through ISA's project preparation, the city of Tshwane received support to develop a feasibility study and business case for the Rooiwal Treatment Works Reuse Project Phase 2. With a capital value of approximately 6.5 billion rand, the project is currently at the public-private partnership feasibility stage and will increase treatment capacity by 50 megalitres per day while supporting water reclamation and bulk water transfer. Through project preparation and business case development, Infrastructure South Africa is helping transform critical infrastructure needs into credible, investment-ready, and bankable opportunities. Aging municipal infrastructure remains one of the greatest barriers to reliable service delivery across South Africa.
The challenges in Machabeng are historical because of an aging infrastructure. So that tells you a story that we did not invest on the infrastructure.
Recognizing that effective project preparation is essential for infrastructure delivery, ISA supported the development of a feasibility study and business case for the replacement of aging asbestos cement and galvanized steel water pipes throughout Machabeng local municipality. The project has a capital value of approximately 2.4 billion rand and focuses on replacing deteriorated water infrastructure across Allen Ridge, Henneman, Odendalsrus, Ventersburg, Virginia, and Velkorn. Years of aging infrastructure have contributed to significant water losses, increasing operational costs while reducing the municipality's ability to provide reliable water services.
We are losing more than 50% on water leakages because of the aging infrastructure. We did not just wait for the approval from the Department of Water and Sanitation. We thought it's important that we must implement this program as we are waiting for the approval.
Through its project preparation support, ISA has helped develop a structured investment case, implementation roadmap, and funding strategy that strengthens project readiness and improves the municipality's ability to mobilize investment for implementation.
We can report that the project is now at 95%.
By supporting municipalities to prepare technically sound and financially credible infrastructure projects, ISA is helping build a stronger pipeline of bankable municipal investments capable of delivering lasting improvements in service delivery.
We will be able to make sure that our infrastructure is now ready for another 50 years, where our people, we will have what is called a legacy project supported by our national government through the Infrastructure South Africa.
South Africa's infrastructure future is also about building local industrial capacity and positioning the country for the green economy. At the OR Tambo Special Economic Zone in Ekurhuleni, Isondo Precious Metals is developing an integrated platform for platinum group metal beneficiation and manufacturing designated SIP20E under the Green Hydrogen National Program.
80% of the world's PGM, but 60% youth unemployment. There is no realistic conversation where those two numbers should be together, and we are trying to change that paradigm. So essentially what we are doing at Isondo is taking final refined metal from our producers and then adding value to that, converting that into the specialty PGM chemicals, into catalyst precursors, into membrane electrode assemblies for fuel cells and electrolyzers, underpinning the green hydrogen strategy of the country. There was no recognition that South Africa has got the capability of doing something at this high level of advanced manufacturing. We're known for mining, refining, and exporting. Taking it up the value chain, trying to convince people that yes, we can do it, was the first challenge. And we solved that challenge, I think, by going best in class. We built our facility to a level that is state of the art. And to me, the most important intervention has been standing, has been credibility, has been recognition, because it helped transform a private company with an unusual or new business idea into one of national strategic importance. And that's really cannot be underestimated. The recognition provided by Infrastructure South Africa basically made us part of the conversation, put us into the room. And I think that changed the whole dynamic quite significantly.
With approximately $25 million invested to date, the facility is now entering commissioning and production ramp-up. At full production, it is expected to create approximately 350 direct green STEM jobs and avoid an estimated 1.6 million tons of CO2 annually.
I think recognition, that's just the first phase of the project. The next phase is where I think ISA can come into its own. It's taking it up the next level into coordination. We've now got the recognition, we're now a strategic project. Now how do we take that into the next phase where we ensure the facilities are built to the right standard? It ensures that we get the capital in place, we get the DFIs in place, the money to be placed, capital sequencing, and then going to market, getting the customers. I think Infrastructure South Africa can be part of the journey and help open up the doors and help drive this through in the same window so we don't lose time.
Through its SIP designation and project support, Infrastructure South Africa is helping position Isondo as a strategic project that advances localization, industrialization, and South Africa's green hydrogen ambitions. 5 projects, 5 different infrastructure challenges, one common objective: building a stronger foundation for South Africa's future. Whether enabling the implementation of strategic integrated projects under the Infrastructure Development Act or supporting projects through feasibility studies and business case development, ISA helps transform infrastructure concepts into credible, investment-ready, and bankable opportunities. Every regulatory bottleneck resolved, every feasibility study is completed, every business case developed, every project moved closer to implementation, brings South Africa one step closer to closing its infrastructure investment gap.
Infrastructure South Africa's mandate is to accelerate infrastructure delivery by strengthening project preparation, mobilizing investment, and enabling better infrastructure planning through credible, evidence-based decision-making. Project preparation is one of the most critical stages of infrastructure delivery. It transforms early infrastructure concepts into bankable, investment-ready projects through rigorous technical studies, engineering assessments, financial modeling, legal due diligence, and implementation planning. But effective project preparation begins with one fundamental requirement: accurate, reliable information. To plan effectively, you first need a clear understanding of the infrastructure we are seeking to improve. For many years, one of the greatest challenges has been visibility. How do we accurately assess thousands of schools across South Africa? How do we prioritize investment when information is incomplete, is inconsistent, or is outdated? The answer is simple. You cannot prepare quality projects projects, you cannot invest with confidence, and you cannot deliver sustainable infrastructure if you cannot clearly see what exists. That is why our partnership with DeltaScan is so important. Through advanced digital technologies, we are generating high-quality infrastructure intelligence that supports every stage of project preparation process and enables smarter, evidence-based decisions.
Mr. President, Infrastructure South Africa continues to spearhead infrastructure thought leadership, catalytic initiatives, and innovative solutions that progress the country's ambitious infrastructure agenda. We are therefore pleased to announce that stemming from the bid window 2 for project preparation, these are the top 8 priority infrastructure initiatives for the 2026-2027 financial year. 1. City of Tshwane Alternative Waste Treatment Technology. 2. Alternative Waste Treatment Technology, Gauteng Local Municipalities. 3. AIDC Roslyn Automotive Inland Port. 4. Redevelopment, upgrade, and long-term operation of Pilanesberg International Airport. 5. Turnaround of water supply in the Dr. Ruth Sekgomotsi Mompati District Municipality, DRSMDM. 6. Free State Roads Program. 7. Redevelopment of Port of Entry Phase 2. 8. Municipal Infrastructure Program Water Edition. Infrastructure South Africa, building a credible, bankable infrastructure pipeline for South Africa.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, there's really a lot of work that lies ahead. Can we please clap and congratulate the projects that have been chosen? This is a pipeline of projects that will receive project preparation and support from Infrastructure South Africa. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to release the construction book, the 2026-2027 construction book. So please help me welcome back on stage Minister Dean McPherson and Mametsi Masemola, the head of Infrastructure South Africa, to officially release this construction book. This edition of the construction book comprises 110 projects, and this is across 6 infrastructure sectors with a combined value of approximately 395 billion rand and a national geographic spread. So beyond these headline numbers, this edition also reflects quite important changes on this composition and maturity of the infrastructure pipeline. So this goal by Infrastructure South Africa is that this construction book that you see here becomes sort of the go-to source of reliable, up-to-date information on construction projects that are fully funded and ready for procurement. And this really aligns with the broader mission to promote predictable, transparent, and investable infrastructure environment to further build trust in the industry, but also attract additional investment. So, ladies and gentlemen, we present to you the 2026-2027 construction book. Can you clap once more, please? Thank you very much. And just a reminder that this will be available on the ISA and Sidssa websites. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Deputy Minister. And thank you to Mametsi Masemola as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to hear an interaction between the President and some of our esteemed guests. And then after that, we're going to see the signing of some important MOUs today. But before we get to the signing, please help me welcome again the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, who's going to lead this discussion with the President. Minister, over to you.
I think this is working. Yes. Mr. President, I hope you can see my pretty face again. Is the President online?
I'm muted, yes?
Okay, so you can hear my pretty voice and see my pretty face.
It's growing.
Mr. President, Clement was telling us about this clock it thing. And I know you're a fan.
Oh, yes.
So I wanted to say your speech clocked it. Did I get it right? Mr. President, all right. Mr. President, I'd like to introduce the following panelists who will join us. The Honourable Minister for Land, Public Works and Urban Development from the Republic of Kenya, Minister Alice Wahome. Can she join us on stage? The CEO of the Zutari Group, Mr. Teddy Daka. And from Standard Bank, Mr. President, it is Tandiwe Lechwali. She is the head of client coverage in South Africa. So, Mr. President, maybe just to set the scene after your speech, you know that this is our third day. We've had a number of interactions, from site visits to the Leaders Forum and discussions in between. So I'd like to hand over to the Minister from Kenya for her thoughts, and then to pose a question to yourself, Mr. President. Over to yourself, Minister.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister. Your Excellency, President Ramaphosa, I am greatly honored. It's a privilege to interact with you in this particular forum for sustainable infrastructure development here in Cape Town, South Africa. My name is Alice Wahome, CS or Cabinet Secretary, Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development. Thank you very much. It's great to be here in South Africa. Your Excellency, the discussions around this room from yesterday and day before are that Africa must work together. We must be united in developing an infrastructure that is not just for our countries, but for the whole of Africa. That we must ensure that our roads, our infrastructure, water, pipelines for our transport, for our fuel, are connecting Africa for development. And I have listened to you, Your Excellency, very inspiring, and you continue to encourage people working for our communities and our countries that we must now move from project planning to project preparedness to concrete implementation. Action must be taken now. To do that, Your Excellency, there is need for huge investment, and therefore we appreciate that in this forum we are together with our partners. From Kenya, we have recently followed your footsteps, that we have been able to come up with National Infrastructure Fund. As a Cabinet Secretary for Housing and Urban Development in Kenya, I'm privileged to be operating under the Affordable Housing Act. We have a huge program that is also connecting communities by providing proper urban housing to deal with the question of urban population growth. Therefore, my question, Your Excellency, with great humility, my question is, Mr. President, how do we strengthen the political commitment and practical collaboration between African countries so that we move beyond our national interests and accelerate delivery of regional and continental infrastructure development as a shared program? Thank you, Your Excellency. Most humbled. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
My dear sister, it's such a real joy to have you from Kenya coming to South Africa and joining us in this very important collaboration. I mean, firstly, I think we must begin by recognizing that African integration will not ultimately be built through treaties or institutions, but it will essentially be built by what people can see and feel and utilize. And infrastructure, therefore, plays a critical role. We can talk about integration until the cows come home, but if we do not have roads that are going to connect people, that are going to make people to move efficiently between our countries on the continent, then we're just dreaming and it's just talk. If we're not going to have the airways, that is, be able to fly from one country to another, have proper airlines, then that integration evaporates. If we're not going to improve our ports so that our goods can travel from one country to the next country, utilizing our ports, then we're just talking and talking. So in order to build and to improve the infrastructure, we need to ensure that that integration is based on what can benefit people more directly in a very visible way. And doing so through infrastructure, through iconic projects that can enhance the connection of our people on the ground between our countries is the best way of enhancing infrastructure. And once we can lock our attention and our efforts on infrastructure, then it becomes easy to identify projects. And then money, capital begins to flow to address particularly this need that is there. And we saw how, for instance, with telecommunications, we were able to break down barriers and get our people across various countries to communicate. As soon as we opened the airwaves, they were able to communicate. And no government, no ruler, no president could stop that intercommunication and the integration. So we do therefore need to open channels. Infrastructure therefore is the physical architecture for African integration. The first thing we need to do is to make sure that there's stronger political ownership of regional infrastructure by our heads of state. And once that ownership happens, then it enables the key players, the investors, to move forward in tandem. And second, we must also change the way we think about national interests. Sometimes we are held back by wanting to promote our national interests. This is sometimes an assumption that regional infrastructure requires countries to sacrifice their national interests, and that is not so. our interests must be continental. There must be interests that will enhance the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And there must be interests like, a railway line must not stop at a border of a country by saying we want to promote our interests. It must be a railway line that will go way across. I mean, now that we're talking more and more about one border stops where we say, even as you're moving as a person, even as you're moving goods, it must be one stop, not stop, start on the other side. We must have similar processes that will enhance and make that infrastructure that we will have installed to be much more friendly, usable, and efficient, and we must be able to facilitate the movement of people easily. So in the end, we must also synchronize our planning systems. And our planning systems need to be regional. And in fact, they also need to be continental. It was Cecil John Rhodes, the colonialist, who thought of building a railway line from Cape Town to Cairo. Now that was, planning that he had. Of course, he couldn't do it in the end. We must plan likewise. We must be planning to build that Inga dam project to generate electricity that will be utilized across a number of countries. So if we only focus on our national interests, or if the DRC only focuses on its national interests, then we will fail to utilize that huge resource that should power many, many, many countries. So our planning must be integrated. We must be able to sit down together as various countries and talk about the Great Inga Dam project and what it will yield for us. And in the end, once we can do so, if we plan regionally, then project preparation and project financing become easier because our interests become aligned and we therefore all know what needs to be done. And that also will help us to achieve, if you like, a fifth objective of breaking down borders and barriers and begin to see each other as countries like other regions in the world look at themselves. Look at Europe. Europe has broken down barriers. They now trade as one trading bloc, and they develop specialities. One country in Europe can develop a speciality to build certain components of one product, like, for instance, Airbus. The Airbus plane is built in a number of European countries. And in order to do that, those parts that one country builds must be able to move with ease. So that then leads to the breaking down of borders, of barriers. And that, in the end, is the way we should be moving. And that, lastly, then harmonizes our laws, our regulations, our policies. Then we become united and well synchronized as a region. So I see a great future for us if we focus on infrastructure. In fact, I do believe that infrastructure is the catalyst, is the trigger that we need to use, because then it unites us. Whether we like it or not, it is through infrastructure that a road will go through a country, a pipeline will go through a country. So that's where we need to enhance the integration of our nations. That's what I would think.
Give him a round of applause.
Oh, we have a great.
Teddy, you know that over the last 3 days we've been speaking about some really important issues around planning, preparing, skills, Now, you have a unique bird's eye view of where it works and where it doesn't work through your company, both into Africa and to the Middle East. Maybe you just want to reflect on some of those thoughts for the President, and then pose a question as well on the back of that.
Thank you, Minister McPherson, for inviting me to engage, as we say in South Africa, with His Excellency the President. But first, I'd like to offer an apology, and I do apologize profusely. The standard that His Excellency and yourself, Minister, have set for pretty faces, as I suspect I will do, I'm lowering the standard, so my apologies for that, Mr. Excellency. In the unlikely event that I've raised the standard, Mr. President, it was unintentional on my part. I thank my mother and her genes. Your Excellency, Mr. President, the infrastructure conversation quite rightly focuses on investment. We need finance, we need capital for projects, no doubt about it. But capital, as you know, would not deliver infrastructure. Major projects begin long before construction. They require strong conceptualization. You need engineers, you need economic people, you need environmentalists. All the studies that need to be done, we need the correct procurement strategy, stakeholder management, all these to ensure we get the good outcomes that infrastructure needs to do. In South Africa, we have considerable capability, Mr. President. We have the technical capability, both within the private sector as well as the public sector. The challenge, however, is how we organize this capability around coming about with sustainable programs of infrastructure delivery. We also need to build, and this I cannot but emphasize, the capability of the state to be able to ensure good infrastructure outcomes. A state that can not only define infrastructure problems properly, but interrogate the technical solutions that we in the private sector offer. We have built, as the private sector, bridges without roads. So we need a state that can interrogate and double check what the private sector is doing. Manage professional teams and contractors, and also a state that can allocate risk appropriately. They do say, Mr. President, that on our beloved continent, building infrastructure comes at a 30% premium for the same kind of infrastructure being built in, for example, Western Europe. We need a state that can understand that. And coming from an engineering company, there's the dimension of skills, as you correctly pointed out, that without the necessary skills, it would be difficult to build infrastructure. We need to build a new generation of engineers, other professionals such as architects, environmentalists, quantity surveyors, and everybody within the ecosystem of professionals on infrastructure. And that includes rebuilding our construction capability in terms of the contractors that we seem to have constraints at the moment. With that in mind, Mr. President, there is this burning question that has been burning for me for the past 3 years. Your Excellency, how do we build a national infrastructure delivery capability that brings together the best capacity of the state and that of the private sector, while ensuring that government retains the institutional capability to conceptualize, procure, and oversee major projects effectively, like we did leading to the 2010 FIFA World Cup? Thank you, Your Excellency.
Well, I know that you forever thank your parents for the handsome way that you look, so you do not need to apologize for lowering standards. Teddy, you continue to dazzle many with the way you look. But on the question that you raise, what we really need to do is to build what I would call a unique and ongoing, permanent infrastructure delivery capability inside the state. And this is where we need, and we are not doing this enough, to have lots of skilled people, like engineers, like architects, like building scientists, inside the state who will help in a very deliberate way, help to design the best engineering projects and to have the capability to project manage and also to construct those. And also have the ability to be able to work with the private sector, to work with other social partners. And the central lesson for us in government must never be to outsource the ability to plan. I would even say our ability, we must not outsource our intelligence, our capability to think. At the same time, we should be able to then work with the private sector, work with them, and to an extent that is required, yes, outsource specialist aspects of what we need to do in building projects, because private sector may well be well adept in doing so, so that they are able to come work with the public sector. And this is where the PPPs, the public-private sector projects, then need to come to the fore, where one hand washes another, where a capability that one sector has augments the other capability that another sector has, where, for instance, we work together to button down projects and make them bankable, make them financeable, and make them projects that can be executed. This requires a strong institutional capability at the center of government and a willingness to be able to work with the private sector to execute these programs, with each one playing their own role, knowing what role they play, and others will bring key innovative roles or capabilities. And that, for me, is a wonderful combination of just being able to ensure that projects become bankable and they become executable. At the same time, we should recognize that if we work together, we're then able to achieve enormous results. And I've often said that government cannot do this alone. And similarly, it should apply to the private sector, that the private sector also cannot do certain things alone, much as it would argue that it has great capabilities. Even those great capabilities need to be properly regulated, properly permitted to happen. So a combination of government and private sector, and in the end, labor. Labor as well needs to be part of the mix, as well as communities, so that we take out insurance, as it were, that projects should not be hijacked by construction mafias. So if we all bring to bear our capabilities and our talents, we will definitely make headway. And the financing community then would find it a lot easier once this wonderful cocktail of success has been put together. The financiers will find it a lot easier because they will be presented with projects that are easily able to be executed, having brought together the various talents that each one has to bring to bear. So I think we've got really potent opportunities that can really explode into the infrastructure build. And I think that's where we should go. Yeah, thank you.
So we've heard about the regional opportunities, we've heard about what needs to be done in terms of skills and capacitation, but all of that can be undone if we can't fund it. And over the last 3 days, Mr. President, we've heard, and this will be good news for you, is that there's so much money available. There's not a shortage of money, but it's how do we actually get that into the projects. So I'm going to ask Thandiwe to respond to that, but just knowing that we are running a little bit short of time, the President has to be in Parliament, and Parliament doesn't even wait for presidents. So they just do their own thing. So over to you, Thandiwe.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Minister McPherson. President, my name is Thandiwe. I come from Standard Bank. And at Standard Bank, we dream of Africa of 2063, a powerhouse and integrated continent. And right to the heart of our purpose, Africa is our home. We drive her growth. I'll cut to the chase. Our CEO, Sim Chabalala, often says, talking is cheap. Here in this conversation, we have brought in a commitment. As the largest bank in the continent, our commitment for the purpose of this conversation focuses on transitioning projects into bankable opportunities by bridging the gap between public planning and private sector capital. We have had a privilege of working with Sim as he was leading infrastructure and finance. It is very clear in the past couple of days that financial institutions can mobilize capital, billions of them, here at home and offshore. But in that paper, it is very evident, and also in this room, the conversation held, that the biggest hurdle has been project preparation. That is the space in which, as a bank, we want to step in and work with the government and various public entities, such as ISA, under the leadership of Mameti. Well done, the Minister, on the establishment of that office. We have found a platform in which we can progress the conversations and also finding opportunities as private sector to step in and support. And therefore, as a bank, we're no longer going to be citing this as a challenge. We are going to be wrestling with it, using our financial muscle in influencing and shaping these solutions. And therefore, my question, Mr. President, what more would you like to see government and financial sector do together to move from identifying projects that have been announced to creating a consistent form, bankable transactions capable of mobilizing capital and institutional capital at scale?
Yes.
You know, one thing that we do not have in short supply is capital. Capital is what we have in abundant supply. And what has really, really been holding us back is on the project side is good project preparation, crafting the projects to be bankable, preparing those projects from what Teddy was saying, making them projects that can gain a life, and with engineering processes and all the skills that you need, and preparing the projects to be presentable to financing. That has been our weakness. But our other weakness, in my view, has been of funding projects. South Africa has a substantial So it's not a one night stand or one project only. It is a continuum of projects. So we should, as government, do so, but also working together with the private sector. That is why for us, Invest South Africa is the one entity in government that is showing that capability. As we meet as the presidential infrastructure committee, we are able to show that we've got so many projects, and we need to bed down the execution of those projects, that the project preparation process is well aligned with what the private sector or institutions that have money can do. But having done that, we therefore need to work with the private sector to craft ways of funding those projects and determine how the revenue streams will work, and the type of packaging, whether it's build, operate, and transfer, whether it's a proper PPPP, and all that. So we then need to move towards structuring. And then, of course, execution. Now, long-term money is there. We just need to go and tap it. Recently, we also heard that there is almost 90 billion rand of unclaimed monies, monies that belong to a number of people, but they have not been claimed for years and years and years. That is a resource that can be utilized and to be replenished with the returns that those funds can. They have no immediate demand for utilization. One day they will be utilized in time to come. So that can be used not on a risk basis, but on a risk-free basis, because it's money that belongs to other people and can be harnessed and utilized for the state. So the other thing is to be able to say to the key players, we need to allocate risk, and we will also need to manage the risk so that one party does not share all the risk as the project is executed and the other party does not. So we do risk allocation, and as we use public money, we should be accountable. We should not be pouring money into projects that will end up losing. We need to utilize people's monies properly. No corruption should be allowed. There must be transparency, and accountability in doing all that. So I do believe that what we need to focus on is to do proper project preparation and ensure that the projects are bankable and line up the financing, work together with financing institutions, craft innovative ways of raising the money, and then see how the money will be utilized. And I would like to see the government and the banks and pension funds and DFIs working together, not continuously discussing infrastructure in abstract. As you say, Sim Chabalala says, you know, talk is cheap. And indeed, talking and talking and talking forever is cheap. Anybody can do it. We now need to put our money where our mouths are and make sure that projects do take off. So I'm hugely encouraged because what we've done in government, a number of key and iconic things. One, we've set up Infrastructure SA, focusing on infrastructure in our Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, and we added infrastructure in the work of the Public Works Department so that it no longer just looks after, you know, public buildings and whether they're clean or not. It must now be developmental. It must then develop infrastructure. So Invest SA, which originated in the presidency, is the engine that now allows us to ensure that there's proper project preparation. And having done so, government has then made a huge commitment, a 1 trillion rand commitment over 3 years. And it will keep growing because our objective is to boost up the infrastructure layout in our country, and we know we can only do so when we work with all other parties. But we've also said that we are going to raise our gaze and look at the regional demand for infrastructure. And so even our developmental and finance institutions like the DBSA, they don't only fund projects here, they also fund projects in the region and elsewhere on the continent. And that is how South Africa demonstrates its close commitment to the continent, that we want to develop the continent, and we will be looking at ways in which, working with the private sector, we can open corridors, we can open channels that will expand our infrastructure delivery process. And then the funding, it must be clever funding, innovative. We must not have insurance companies and provident funds or pension funds that are going to be risk averse. And my own view is that they should be funding infrastructure build, whether it is social infrastructure or investment infrastructure. And if we made the two distinctions, they should be funding the building of hospitals, they should be funding the building of clinics, of schools. All that obviously will be, you know, bankrolled or even financed over a long period by the fiscus. But at the same time, we should be looking at investment infrastructure, properly funded, where we really have good partners who will participate in PPPs or BOTs or all manner of other financing opportunities, where we build as much as we were able to on the continent. So a combination of all those, in my view, Minister, is what South Africa needs to do, and indeed what our region SADC needs to do, and in the end our continent as well. So we've got something really good going for us. And all we need to do is to ignite that ambition to take off like a rocket. And that's where we are headed. So thank you very much.
President, you're absolutely right. Grateful that you managed to join us. We wish you well for your parliamentary sitting, and hopefully we'll see you next year and welcome you back here. So everyone, please can we just give another round of applause for the President of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, and our panel. Thank you very much.